Class 5 Intervals. Intervals. An interval is a distance in pitch between two notes. When the notes of an interval are played one after the other, the interval is called melodic. When the notes of an interval are played at the same time, the interval is called harmonic. All intervals have a specific number. This number is determined by counting the letter names of the notes in the interval from the lowest to highest. Example, so this is C and there's G. So there are 5 letter names from C to G because C, D, E, F, G, and you have to include both C and G. So C, D, E, F, G is 5 notes, so this is an interval of a fifth. Problems. Name the following melodic intervals. So these are melodic intervals because they're played one after the other. So the first one is from C to G, like the one we saw before. So when it's C to G, that's C, D, E, F, G, so it's 5. The next one is F to A, F, G, and A, so that's 3. And this is A to D, so A, B, C, D, so 4. And then it's F to E, so F to F would be 8 because it's an octave, and E is 1 below F, so it's 8 minus 1, which is 7. The next one is A to C, so A, B, C, that's 3. And then G to A, that's 2, G and A. And then it's E to E, so it's 8. Now, next, name the following harmonic intervals, and they're harmonic because they're all played at the same time. So the first one is A to A, so that's 8 because it's a perfect octave. The next one is C to A, so C, D, E, F, G, A, so 6. The next one is E to D, so E, F, G, A, B, C, D, so that's 7. Or you could just do to this E, it would be 8, so 8 minus 1 is 7, like the one we did for the F, this one. Then the next one is D to E, so that's 2, and F to A, which is 3, F, G, and A, and then it's E to D, so E to E would be 8, and 8 minus 1 is 7, and the last one is B to F, so B, C, D, E, F, so that's 5. When you do more of these, you won't have to list out all the letter names like we did over here and here, because you can just count without having to write the letter names. The following intervals are formed between the notes of the major scale. So C to C is called a perfect unison, C to D is a major second, C to E is a major third, C to F is a perfect fourth, C to 5 is another perfect fifth, and C to A is a major sixth, C to B is a major seventh, and C to C is the high C, is the perfect octave. The intervals of a unison, fourth, fifth, and octave are classified as perfect intervals. So unison, perfect unison, and the fourth, so perfect fourth, and fifth, perfect fifth, and the perfect octave. They are called perfect intervals. The abbreviation for perfect interval is per. For example, per 4 for perfect fourth. The intervals of a second, third, sixth, and seventh are classified as major intervals. So second, third, sixth, and seventh. The abbreviation for a major interval is MAJ or MAJ. For example, major third written like this. Think of the bottom note of an interval as the tonic for a major scale, so C, 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 and C on the bottom for all of them. If the upper note of the interval is a member of the scale of the lower note, the interval will be either perfect or major. So for example, D to F sharp is a major third because the F sharp is the third note of the D major scale, because the first note is D, the second note is E, and the third note is F. F sharp. So since F sharp is the third note of the D major scale, it's called a major third. F to B flat is a perfect fourth because B flat is the fourth note of the F major scale. So you only use major something when that note is part of the major scale. And then you use perfect when you use perfect for perfect unison, fourth, fifth, and octave, only when it's a major scale. Now write the following intervals above D. So first it says a major second above D, so that's E. Because the key signature for D major is F sharp and C sharp. So the second major second means the second note of the D major scale, so that's an E. And a perfect unison is the first note, which is also D. The perfect fourth. In a real exam, when they tell you to write intervals, you usually write harmonic intervals, so it's like this. When it's a perfect unison, you write them side by side. Then a perfect fourth. So a perfect fourth is the fourth note of the D major scale. So D, E, F, G. So the fourth note of the D major scale is G. And since G is not a key signature for D major, it's just a G. And then a major seventh. So a major seventh is the seventh note of the D major scale, which is C, but the key signature has a C sharp, so it would be C sharp. A major sixth would be B. A major third is F, but F sharp is a key signature, so it's F sharp. And a perfect fifth is A, and a perfect octave is the higher D. A minor interval is 1/2 step smaller than a major interval. In other words, the notes of a minor interval are 1 semitone closer together than the notes of a major interval. Only seconds, thirds, sixth, and seventh can be minor intervals. So C to D is a major second, and if you lower the D by 1 semitone, or half step, it would be C to D flat, and C to D flat is a minor second, and C to E is a major third, and C to E flat is a minor third. D to E is a major second. If you lower the E by 1/2 step, that's D to E flat, which is a minor second, and D to F sharp is a major third. If you lower the F sharp by 1/2 step, that's D to F, which is a minor third. The abbreviation for a minor interval is MIN. For example, minor third written like this. To determine if an interval is major or minor, think of the bottom note as the tonic of a major scale. If the top note is a member of the major scale of the bottom note, the interval is major. If the top note is a semitone, a half step lower, we don't use semitones anymore, the interval is minor. For example, D to F natural is a third, but So like this one, D to F natural is a third, but F natural is not part of the scale of D major. F sharp is, but not F. So the interval of D to F natural is 1/2 step smaller than the major third from D to F sharp. So that means D to F is a minor third. Intervals are always identified by using the lowest note as the tonic. This applies to melodic intervals even when the lowest note comes after the highest note. So for example, if it's a C to an E flat, the C is not the tonic in this case, it's still the E flat. So E flat to C, since C is part of E flat major and it's the sixth, it's a major sixth. And then there's A and F, since even though F is after A, we still read from F to A, not A to F. So F to A, since A is part of the major scale, it's a major third. And then it's B flat to C, even though C is after B flat, C is read as the tonic note, and we go up to B flat. And B flat isn't part of the C major scale, but B is, so B flat is a 1/2 step lower than B, and that's true, so it's a minor seventh, not a major seventh or perfect seventh. An augmented interval is 1/2 step larger than a perfect or a major interval. In other words, the notes of an augmented interval are 1/2 step further apart than the notes of a perfect or major interval. A perfect or major interval can be made augmented by raising the top note or lowering the bottom note by 1/2 step. The abbreviation for an augmented interval is aug, for example, aug fourth. So this is a perfect fifth. An augmented fifth would you could raise the G, which is the top note, so it would be C to G sharp. That's an augmented fifth. Or you could lower the bottom note, which is C, so it's C flat to G. That's also an augmented third. So that's the perfect part. For a major interval, this A flat to C is a major third. An augmented third, you could raise the top note, which is a C, so it's A flat to C sharp, or you can lower the bottom note, which is A flat, so it's A double flat to C. That's also an augmented third. A diminished interval is 1/2 step smaller than either a perfect or minor interval. In other words, the notes of a diminished interval are 1 semitone closer together than the notes of either a perfect interval or a minor interval. A perfect interval can be made diminished by lowering the top note or raising the bottom note by 1 semitone or 1/2 step. The abbreviation for a diminished interval is dim, for example, dim 5. So the diminished interval is like the opposite of an augmented interval. So this C to G is a perfect fifth. If you want it to be diminished, you could lower the top note, which is G, so it's C to G flat, or you could raise the top note, because raising the top note would also make the gap smaller, so it's C sharp to G. Now C to C is a perfect eighth. If you want it to be a diminished eighth, you could lower the top note to make the distance between these two notes closer, so that's C to C flat, or you could raise the bottom C, so it's C sharp to C natural. Another name for the diminished fifth and its enharmonic equivalent, the augmented fourth, is the tritone. This name is derived from the fact that these intervals consist of 3 whole tones. The tritone is a difficult interval to sing and is often avoided when composing vocal music. At one time in this interval was considered to be so dissonant or disagreeable, it was called the diabolus in musica, or the devil in music. A minor interval can be made diminished by lowering the top note or raising the bottom note by 1 semitone or 1/2 step. So this is a major third. A minor third, you could lower the top note, so it's G to B flat, and if you want it to be diminished, then you can lower the top note again, so it'd be G to B double flat. And even though even though B double flat is equal to A, you can't write it as G to A because that would be called a major second, which is equivalent to this, but it's not allowed. Or you could raise the top note from minor third to diminished third. So instead of lowering the top note like here, you could raise the G, so it's G sharp to B flat. And so F to D is a major sixth. Minor sixth, you could raise the bottom note. And then diminished sixth, you can raise the bottom note again. So F double flat, double sharp to D, or you could lower the top note over here, so it would be F sharp to D flat. Note that a diminished interval is 1/2 step smaller than a perfect interval, but 2 half steps smaller than a major interval. Here is a summary of the relationship between the various types of intervals. The starting point is the note in the major scale. So this is the note in the major scale. So perfect is unison, fourth, fifth, and octave. And major is second, third, sixth, and seventh. And if you add 1/2 step, it becomes augmented. And if you minus 1/2 step, it becomes diminished. If it's perfect, it becomes diminished. If it's major, it becomes minor. And when it's minor and you lower it by another 1/2 step or lower it by 2/2 steps in the major scale, it becomes diminished. And if it's already diminished from perfect, then you can't lower it again. Inversion. When an interval is turned upside down, it is inverted. For example, when the interval of G to B is inverted, it becomes B to G. So this is G to B, and then it becomes B to G or B to G. There are two ways to invert an interval. One, write the lower note above the upper note like this one, so the G goes above the B. Or you can write the upper note below the lower note, so the G stays in the same spot and you move the B down. When an interval is inverted, major interval becomes minor, minor becomes major, augmented becomes diminished, diminished becomes augmented, and perfect remains perfect. So this is a major third. Inverting it would make it a minor sixth, perfect fifth, perfect fourth, and all these. Note that the number of an interval plus the number of its inversion is always equal to 9. Compound intervals. An interval that is larger than an octave is called a compound interval. The easiest way to identify a compound interval is to reduce it down to its simple form within the range of an octave. To do this, move the top note down 1 octave or the bottom note up 1 octave. The quality, which is perfect, major, minor, augmented, or diminished, of the reduced interval is the same as that of the compound interval. So C to this high G is a perfect 12th, but you can identify it by moving this G down to the lower G, which is a perfect 5th, and you add 7 to it. Now this is C, E to F sharp, which we can first E to F, the lower F sharp, and we know that is a major second, so it's still major when it's like this, but you add 7 to the 2, so it's major 9th. Now it's D to G flat. Oh, I think it's supposed to be C to. No, this one should be D, not C. So this is a D to a G flat, and so D to G flat, and you could move the G flat down to a lower G flat. So D to the low G flat is a diminished fourth, and then you add 7, so it's a diminished 11th over here. Inverting compound intervals. There are 3 ways to invert a compound interval. 1, write the bottom note 2 octaves higher. So this is the first one. So there's a C sharp and you move it 1 octave and another octave. So that's how you invert it. 2, write the top note 2 octaves lower. So over here there's this, and you move this 2 octaves lower over here. 3, write the upper note down 1 octave and the lower note up 1 octave. So D to A, move the A down 1 octave and the D up 1 octave. And when you invert compound interval, the quality is the same as inverting normal intervals. So diminished major becomes minor, minor becomes major, diminished becomes augmented, augmented becomes diminished, and perfect remains perfect. The augmented octave. The augmented octave is a compound interval since it is larger than a perfect octave. So when it is inverted, it becomes a diminished octave. So, for example, D to D sharp, this is a compound interval even though it's 8 because it's larger than a perfect octave. So when you invert it, it becomes a diminished octave. So D sharp to D natural. Enharmonic equivalents in intervals. So before we talked about enharmonic equivalents, which are notes that sound the same but are spelled differently. You may be required to change the upper or lower note of an interval enharmonically. So this is an augmented fifth, and you can change the top note, which is a C sharp, to a D flat, and even though it's the same interval, it becomes a minor sixth note, so it's technically not the same anymore. And a minor ninth, if you change the top F flat down to an E, that's an augmented eighth, which is different. And then there's major third, which is like this, and you change the lower note enharmonically into G sharp, and it becomes a diminished fourth. And this one is C to G flat, and you change the C into D double flat, and it becomes an augmented 11th.